And so what's going on with your guys? You guys are kind of shut down?
We are totally shut down, and
Mm-hmm.
we made that decision kind of there was a confluence of factors, but one of them actually, even before we were really looking at race season, we host the snowshoe season too. So
Mm-hmm.
we've got beyond the dryland stuff. We were doing snowshoe ultras about that time. There were a couple early outbreaks that were occurring at ski resorts, and especially ski resorts in kind of smaller isolated mountain communities out west. I think there was one in Idaho in particular, not to single them out, but that's if you're looking for the news articles, that was one of them. And we
Mm-hmm.
started thinking about Northeast Trail Runs is really about Vermont and about running in the Northeast, and what the terrain and the weather and the kind of like gnarly vibe that we love up here to foster. But that also means people have to travel. So the second we realized that people were
Mm-hmm.
going to have these bottlenecks, that there's a nexus where at some point they're going to be going, they've got to come to Vermont. We don't have many people. We've got probably more cows than runners. And so it's a really big ask to try to host a race in that climate. And so right around the time that we decided to cancel the entire 2020 season, the governor issued a mandate, Governor Phil Scott, thereby closing all fairs and festivals of
Mm-hmm.
various numbers. We were going back between 25, 10, 50. Either way we cut it, we didn't feel that there was a way to host, especially what our first event on the calendar was, the Ethan Allen, which is a 24-hour track race, and it's
Yeah.
tough. The logistical hurdles of the race itself were mind-boggling enough, but to do the permutations of the destination event like that, we just thought that it wasn't going to be feasible, and we wanted to put our efforts towards next year. So we've been really in like a next year building mode.
Nice. And like you said, a small place. I came to your 48, the BB. You guys invited me out there and picked me up in New York City. And yeah, you got to travel ways. Of course, the distances aren't like out here at West, but it was funny. I was walking around with Claire, I believe, who's the Vermont native.
Yep.
And I was like, yeah, I'm from a small town in California, Bakersfield, California, and it's about 500,000. And she just started laughing. And she goes, Andy, do you know how many people live in Vermont? And I'm like, I have no idea. She's all 700,000. And so I was like, I guess I'm not from a small town, but yeah, it's very remote. Get going. Speaking of Badwater, I'm sure you saw Harvey Lewis is out there doing the FKT.
Yes, that is one of my I
Yes,
think that's probably the most classic, stoutest, most hardcore FKT route thing. And Harvey's like the classic everyman hero runner.
mhm.
So he's the absolute like giant killer to go after Marsh's mark, which I'm just so stoked to watch.
Yeah, and he's starting, I believe, he's probably starting right
Just
now.
started just
Yeah,
15 minutes ago.
yeah, because he said that he's going to start at the same time that Marshall started and all that. And I know that that's been kind of a bucket list kind of thing for yourself.
Yeah, yeah. And the question of the daytime start versus the nighttime start, actually, to digress for a second, is the reason I think why my wife and co-race director became my wife and co-race director. Was our first date. We had an argument about the daytime start versus nighttime start.
Hmm.
So all respect to all of my close friends who have established all those marks. And there are so many good reasons why you're all the most badass, but it's just it's so hardcore to talk about a 6 p.m. start and getting to the summit of Whitney in the dark, in the freezing cold when you're depleted, versus
Mm.
hitting Hound Pass when there's a furnace hitting you in the face, or the sun on your back. It's the permutations of that route. There's no way that it's not just epic.
Yeah, but I mean, I just talked to Ed about we ramble on all kinds of topics, and we were talking about Badwater, and that one of the problems with the nighttime start, they're forced to do it instead of the noon start, is now the slower people definitely have to do 2 nights. And I was out there with Carla Ken a couple of years ago, and pulling those 2 nights is definitely difficult. But yeah, it's kind of if you're fast, it's not bad, but yeah, it's definitely going up to Whitney. And so, like I was asking you, so I know your plans were your plans actually to try and do the whole 146, or you were talking about 135 or what?
I was going to declare a 135 and hope to go for a 146 to make it my rookie effort, and that
Yeah.
way, if I felt like I could climb, I definitely would. That's
Yeah.
I think that's part of the thing is it's such a it's a high consequence start when you start up, and so you're making a choice at Whitney Portal about your own safety and also your ability to keep the event and the integrity of the thing intact by being as safe for the community. And so I definitely didn't want to have any hubris and go for the 146.
Yeah. And I always say
Portal,
it's really not a 146, it's a 157.
you got to get back down.
Yeah. And
I mean,
that's, for me, that's worse. The coming down is just brutal. Yeah, I mean, I'm a big guy and I'm an older guy, and yeah, it's just yeah, it's. I mean, my fastest. I'm not fast, but I've gone up. Just hiking. I've gone up in 7 and come down in 6. Most people would come down in like 3 or 4. I'm pretty slow.
I think that the summit hut is going to look really appealing after 135 miles or 146 miles, in your buns. And so I can't imagine I mean, seriously, the pull of just staying there at altitude. You get all sleepy, you feel nice, and all of a sudden one thing leads to another, and you're like, man, I could live up here.
Well, you could pay a couple years ago a bunch of pussies, and I'll just call them that. Some young guns, like in their 30s, hiked up there. They had some minor issues. They ended up, and it was kind of still some snow. They had some minor issues. They ended up spending the night in the hut, and then they called for rescue. And some rangers hiked all the way up there, helped their asses, and then they ended up, even though they were completely mobile, it was on, you can YouTube it, you can find it somewhere. A big ass helicopter landed up there and took those guys down, and they were like in their third, they were your age,
Well,
healthy
I mean,
young men, and there
that's
was nothing
yeah.
wrong with them. And what I loved about it though is the rangers who came up there to help them when they were offered a ride on the big ass helicopter, like, now we'll hike back down.
The, but you do know, you got to know deep down that as much as they rip those guys, rightly so, and as horrible of a decision as that is for so many
Yeah.
reasons,
Oh yeah.
they definitely want to land that helicopter on top of that mountain just to see if it will make it to 14, and just because they're dying to do it. So you always know that the SNR guys, there's this push.
Oh no, I'm
pull.
not talking to SNR. I'm talking me watching the video. I was like, I really wish I knew who those guys were that took a helicopter ride back down. I mean, yeah, it sucks going. It's a brutal. Just doing the Whitney hike in a day sucks, but add on the Badwater. But it was just funny because they landed, and yeah, there was that. I mean, like, they're showing the video of the guys walking to the helicopter, and there's nothing wrong with them.
Yeah, I mean, I remember
really done that. So, like, I was talking about the Badwater thing. Obviously not this year. You got any plans? Like, have you been? Yeah, and you're not racing. Have you been doing any training? I know, or any of that kind of stuff, or what's been going on with you?
No, I like to joke that RDing is probably the leading cause of heart disease in America, but it's been tough to train. Definitely haven't been prioritizing fitness. I think for the past couple of years,
Mm.
it's been more about running community and building up. I think as runners also, we have a lot of areas in which we've got weaknesses in our skills and our outdoor skills, and we get by because we're only out, like we're talking about, light mountaineering, walk up stuff and hiking. And that, those holes, I think, are something I've been trying to address a lot through Northeast Trail Runs and through just general trail community. A really good example, we have a snowshoe ultra in March, and the weather can be really dicey in March up here. You get kind of freeze thaw conditions. It can be
Mm-hmm.
really deep. There's breakable crust, and one way or another, the conditions are really shitty. I mean, that's kind of what the Northeast is about, and the notion of a nor'easter storm is exactly kind of what we want to
Yeah.
keep. It's gonna suck. You got to like settle in, buckle down, like deal with it. It's what we got here. It's never the best weather, but it's always beautiful. And so
Yeah.
we definitely found with that event that, for instance, a lot of folks had marked interested as camping in backcountry shelters. I think we had like the whole field pretty much committed to camping. And in the end, we had a couple of people who were takers, But I think the barrier to entry to a lot of this is, do I want to go winter camping when it's going to be -5, in the evening? I need to wake up and race in the morning. It's a 5 mile hike in. I have to bring in food and fuel. You have to have a bear box. And this is to start, something that you plan on taking 5 hours. There's a really big cultural like chasm, I think, that we're finding more and more, that like, if you could be out for 5 hours, like you're saying, like, 7 up, 6 down, you don't really plan on it sucking or going sideways, and you might not have those skills because you've been kind of afraid of going to a place where you would need them. Like if you need
Yeah.
them, it's already gone, like it's totally fucked. That's not something that I was kind of willing to allow anymore. So we've been working on those things, and so I'm definitely a lot less fit, but a lot more able to get my fat ass out if something goes wrong. So